glad to have you back on Nigeria Decides on Plus TV Africa. Now, a few days ago, a video surfaced online about a man who was shot dead, allegedly by custom officers. The Commissioner of Police, Lagos State Police Command, Imohimi Edgal, at the weekend urged the leadership of the Nigerian Customs Service to take stringent measures against any trigger-happy officer.
Yes, of course, but even the police force have had several cases of officers shooting at innocent civilians. How can it be curbed, especially with directives of dealing ruthlessly with anyone snatching ballot boxes? As, Mr. President did make that statement. We still have in the studio with us Peter Igbedion, and of course we're being joined by Dixon Osage. He's a security consultant. Thank you, gentlemen.
So we have two security consultants here with us.
Makes the conversation juicier.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll be talking about this, but then did you see that video and what was your immediate reaction to that? It happened along Benin-Lagos Expressway and Nigerians are reacting. It's generated a lot of frenzy and tension. Are we safe even on our roads in our country? Let me start with you, Dixon.
Well, that was a calculated error by the security agency himself, because I see no reason why he should be trigger hungry. And sometimes I read the report and some people say it was accidental discharge. Some other people say the person in question was trying to struggle arms with him, and that was what led to that shot. You see, we need to educate Nigerians. Before you can classify anything an accidental discharge, there are three measures before you could have an accidental discharge. The first measure is that you have to cock the gun. Second measure, you on the safety, and the third measure, you pull the trigger. You can't carry out three mistakes at the same point in time. So I disagree. Accidental discharge. Accidental discharge are only applicable in war zone areas. Accidental discharge are only applicable in conflict environment, whereby your rifle or your arms or your gun is ready. And professionally, your gun is supposed to be ready when you are in the front line. But when we have our security agencies on the highway and they are trigger hungry, I think that is very, very wrong. On that very custom officer, I watched the video. I wept because we must not suffer such kind of disaster from our security agency.
Talking about the video.
Yeah, let's just quickly look at that video and we'll come back to you, Peter, so we can comment on it. For those who have not necessarily seen it, let's just take a quick look at that video.
I'm gonna come for Lagos. If you touch my phone, this one for X. This one for best. This is my phone first. This is my phone. If you touch her, you will not say you're paying salary. This is my phone. Touch her. Yes, I'm a Nigerian citizen. I don't go to this town. What do you want? Shoot it. Give me. You don't keep passing. You see him? Cause I don't keep passing you. Personne qui passe yo. Personne qui passe yo. Personne qui passe.
That shot him. He's standing over him.
That's an intentional discharge.
Wow. Because we could hear the gun cock.
Absolutely. When you move the safety latch, you could hear the safety also.
That's an intentional discharge. You see, personally myself, I was privileged to join the military 22 years ago, and I disengaged from service 17 years ago to pursue a career in security management. You see, the first point of training we received then was how to manage the rifle. Because when you even cock your rifle against any human being, the law says you have killed.
Okay, not necessarily discharging.
Not necessarily you shoot that gun.
Oh.
So that discipline was binding on every soldier. When you cock your gun, automatically you have killed. You'll be charged for murder. It doesn't mean whether you shoot the person or you don't shoot the person. What that implies is that the military are putting in deterrent measures to ensure that such kind of incident don't happen. It's quite regrettable. We see, I saw the guy. I think they should check his.
But that's the military. So let's break it down.
So
this is not the military. So it's paramilitary.
Paramilitary, yeah.
Let's make the excuse that
they
don't have the same training that you got in the military. I'm just saying it's an excuse of sorts for the purpose of conversation.
Okay.
It's the paramilitary. It's a civil paramilitary organization. The police, the customs, the immigrations, they have a certain kind of, training. So maybe, just maybe, I'm not even in any way saying it's okay to shoot someone. I'm just wondering what kind of training would be given to the paramilitary, because this is not the first time. In River State, in the space of 1 year, at least 4 people were killed by trigger-happy police officers. One, a taxi driver who refused to give 100 naira bribe. and several others. You know, in
We've also
Lagos,
seen corps members.
in Lagos, it was a
members,
woman,
well.
just a pregnant lady or something,
Yes.
was shot here, and then corps members.
In
you know,
Abuja, who
it's
was
just-
shot.
and we
it's
keep
not-
saying accidental discharge, accidental discharge. I mean,
Okay.
I like to say that I agree with him. The methodology and indoctrination of our military does not allow our armed forces to just pull the trigger just like that. And if you assess all of the incidents that have happened, you're unlikely to see one that was committed by a soldier or by a member of the armed forces. However, when you descend to the level of our paramilitary forces, and I want to use a personal example of an incident I was involved in. A few years ago, I was traveling, and along the same stretch of road, just as you're entering Benin, there was this one was even the Federal Road Safety Corps. They didn't have guns. And then they pulled my driver over to extort some money from him, and he refused. And then they took our vehicle and drove it into a bush, into an enclosure. And they said we should come down, find another vehicle to take us to Benin. And I refused. I said, no. First of all, the way this guy drove the vehicle, I don't think he can drive. And then they started arguing with us, and one said he was going to slap me. I tried to diffuse the tension by not saying anything else, part of the training. And then one lady who was taking her daughter back to school kept telling the man, why are you shouting at me? What did I do to you? And he said,
So
they're
it was a
recording
commercial
me.
vehicle.
Commercial vehicle. And she said, and the excuse the road safety guy gave was that, oh, you're recording me. And I said, but they have the right to record. And even if they're recording you, you don't want to be recorded, you can step out of the frame. And then he seizes the phone from this young girl, and while she's trying to get the phone back, he punches her in the face twice.
Dear.
I have the picture on one of my old phones. I tried to escalate the matter, but again, there's so many incidents in this country and that guy has walked away scot-free. I can even mention his name, but this is an example of how across our paramilitary organizations, there's this culture, and I have to call it what it is. There's this culture of impunity where they can do this and get away with it because they believe that once I'm armed or trained or I wear a uniform, I have the right to exert force on civilians.
Is that, because I'm going back to my question, is that is that a reflection of what the kind of training that you get, that the moment you carry a gun, you're a demigod, you're powerful, you can take laws into your hands, or maybe because they take advantage of the fact that these issues are never attended to, there's no escalation, we just cry foul, and then, you know, when it all dies down, we go on to the next thing.
Okay, you see, it's not all about being paramilitary or being military. The first point of call, before you give an individual any arms or ammunition, he must be trained. They are all trained. These guys are well trained. It's all about character and discipline. Now, discipline in the sense that you see, sometimes the leadership of the military should be held accountable. Now, what I have observed personally that's happening in this country is there's no accountability to ammunitions. There's no accountability. There is no accountability in the sense that if I'm giving you a rifle with 60 rounds or 2 magazines, and at the end of duty, you are supposed to account for those bullets, people will behave themselves. But these days, you see people shooting randomly on the streets. They don't account for these bullets. These bullets are bought by taxpayers' money. They don't account for it. So the security agencies leaders, the paramilitary, both custom, all of them, they must be held accountable. They must bring these guys back to the book. Let them be accounting for our weapons and our ammunitions. If they start accounting for that, people will be holding themselves responsible.
Who's going to hold them accountable?
I also want to say this. Again, I refer to the acculturation of these guys in the different institutions. Whether we like it or not, and I'm sure you can find evidence of this across board, you will find 1 or 2 of them on duty under the influence of alcoholic substances or drugs.
This guy in question, did you see this guy? This guy that shot this guy, did you psych him out?
I tell you what,
the guy was drunk.
I tell you what, my first
It's under
experience
influence.
in Port Harcourt was I went to a wedding, and at about 6:37 thereabout, I was on my way back, and then right in front of a police station, this police officer, cladly, you know, dressed, he wore slippers, flip-flops, with his uniform, was carrying a gun, just walked into the middle of the road and told us to stop, just casually. And then we parked, and he said, oh, show me your car license. And we showed everything, and he wanted to extort money, of course, and he was reeking of alcohol at 6:37, and he was carrying a gun. And so I said to the driver, do not argue with this man because he could shoot you. He was drunk. So I came out of the vehicle, walked across to the police station, and I said, I wanted to see your boss because I wasn't sure what this man was capable of. I said, do you know that your officer is reeking of alcohol and he's carrying a gun and he's wearing his slippers in his uniform? Is this how you work here? I cannot forget. It's at Abacha Road Police Station in Port Harcourt.
Okay.
And they had to take it up because they found out that, I was a journalist. So they had to take it up. But we have so many of these people on our streets. How do we ensure the safety of the common person? Because I've heard police officers say, I will shoot you and put the gun in your hand and say you're a thief. So how do we protect ourselves?
Yeah, the first measures is to have a strict deterrence measures. And drinking on duty should be classified as a dismissal offense. That's what I was trained with. Dismissal offense. But I don't know what's happening. Because if you are carrying a gun, Kalashnikov for instance, and the populace are at your mercy, for somebody to have stopped you and say, hey, I can shoot you and put the gun in your hands, that pronouncement alone should send him dismissed. That pronouncement alone, you don't pronounce that.
These things happen all the time. Another example, so because of my work, there's a former Minister of Police Affairs that I had access to. I'd gotten his call card. And I was traveling, and then again, they stopped my bus on the road, and they were trying to extort the driver. The driver refused to give them any money. And then while I was on my phone, one of the police guys came to me and said, who are you? Why are you on your phone? Are you recording me? I said, you're even wearing a sweater that bars me from seeing your ID, so I don't even have your ID. I can't even report you like this. And he said, I want to know who you are. You are talking like, who are you? I said, what do you mean by that? You're delaying me from moving forward with my journey. And apparently, I brought out the card of the minister to be able to send him a text message. And then this guy starts trying to drag the card on the chair. In fact, it generates into a scuffle. And out of just wisdom, from just basic martial arts and comportment, I didn't engage him further. I let him even hit me and get away with it. But then I said to him, I even have your forensics on this card you have squeezed like this now, and I'll take this matter up. And I did take it up when I go back to Abuja. And at the end of the day, you had people pleading, you know what, he was just overzealous, just let him go, you know you're Nigerian. And because many of the times, when things like this happen, we just let it go. Until in the USA, we're seeing what's happening with trigger happy cops as well, being made to face sanctions. It might not be effective right now. You have all lives matter, Black Lives Matter, and it's almost a racial matter now. But at least because people are agitating and taking this matter up, you're seeing some measures taken to change the situation, the paradigm. And
that's where leadership needs to be held accountable because of there should be supervision.
Absolutely.
There's no effective supervision. For example, the incident you said about when you reported that incident and you followed it, or that police officer, the least punishment you received should be demoted or dismissed. Because what he has exhibited, one, improper dressing, then secondly, animal behavior.
Ridiculing the force. Now, let me bring you back to something that happened in 2018. There was this incident of an officer who was drunk somewhere, and the video made it to the internet.
Oh, yes.
It was on social media in Lagos.
Yes.
And then the commissioner of police at the time said that drinks, that is alcohol, sale of alcohol would be banned in police communities in the state, and lots of people thought that wasn't enough deterrent.
In Nigeria, yeah?
In Lagos.
To ban alcohol in police communities.
In police communities. Now, I would also want you to react to that when you respond, but I want us to talk about leadership in Nigeria. Beyond those who are in charge of these forces, up to the president, a lot of things are being said, a lot of rhetoric in the air, and people are asking questions. Are leaders supposed to sound this way if we want to arrest this issue of trigger-happy officers? Are we even empowering them to act? By all of this, and of course it's condoned, and someone is saying be ruthless at this point in time. Let me come to you, Peter.
I think at some level, leadership is being exhibited, but it's not enough. For instance, with all the reports Nigerians were reporting the federal SARS, and that movement I applaud it because it brought into account the atrocities committed by some members of the force, unscrupulous elements anyways. But even with that, you see some police officers step out from amidst the fray and say, if there are incidents like this, please call me. In fact, there's one that happened on Twitter just a few days ago. A guy was arrested. He was extorted of money, close for almost 500,000 naira. And then because he called the numbers available on Twitter of a police officer, a senior police officer, the money was refunded to him and that matter has been taken up. So there's been some exhibition of leadership from people within the system. But until that rises all the way to the top and becomes the language spoken at the highest levels that descends and cascades all the way to the ranks, the lower ranks, these things will not become effective. So again, you have a president who has seen some of the rots exhibited across board for different levels of the force, even from the armed forces themselves to the paramilitary institutions. And they have not replaced the heads of these institutions. Until that is done, like I said, you don't reinforce failure, you don't reward failures. kick out the guys who are not performing, get other people from within the system to try and perform.
Lots of people are asking President Buhari to retract that statement on when he said that those who snatch ballot boxes will pay with their lives. They're calling for him to retract it because it could empower trigger-happy officers on Saturday. What's your take?
That is an indirect fire order.
Yes, absolutely.
He shouldn't have ordered that.
Absolutely.
He was once a general, and he knows what
it
a
is.
fire order is, and that's what we call anticipatory fire order. Now, Keyamo came on air to certify that statement to be an anticipatory fire order. Now, the Constitution of the Federal Republic is very clear. The statement the President made that very day is not human. Such statement is not humane. And Section 17, subsection 2C of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria of 1989 states very clearly that government actions must be humane. When somebody says an action must be humane, it simply implies that you have to show kindness, even to human beings and animals, so that they don't suffer more than they can bear. Now, telling the security people that you steal ballot boxes, you pay with your life. I want to look at it from a point of view that maybe Keyamo says referring to the Constitution. I disagree. You don't order such kind of statement. Now, even if at the expense at which you are going to pay with your life in any given situation, the Constitution made it very clear in the Criminal Proceeding Act that it's only the judge or the magistrate that can educate you on the methodological process in which you will be killed, and let you know if you're going to be killed by hanging or by gunshot or whatever the case may be. Thereafter, you face execution. But now let's go back to what Keyamo addresses on air. I disagree with him in totality. He is a lawyer. He knows better. He should know that. Now, he's quoted the Firearms and the Robbery and Firearms Act. That was not what the Robbery and Firearms Act said. Section 1, subsection 1 of the Robbery and Firearms says that when you are found committing a criminal act, you'll be sentenced to 21 years imprisonment. However, subsection 2 of section 1 of that same act stated it very clearly that in a situation whereby you are armed, because there's a difference between robbery and armed robbery. Robbery is a process in which you inflict fear in order to take something by force from someone, while armed robbery is the application of arms, inclusive of force. So when you apply arms and ammunition in that process of your robbery, the act stated very clearly that you will be brought before the court of law. And upon, listen to that word, the Constitution used the word, and upon conviction, you'll be sentenced to death. Now, that clause upon states very clearly that you cannot bring a dead man to the courts. You have to bring somebody. The person must arrive safely to the court before he will face that judgment. The court does not, the Constitution never asks anybody in this country to kill anybody. Now, when you go to Section 8 of that Criminal Proceeding Act as well, it stated very clearly the use of force. Now, it's just what we call the reasonable use of force. You have to balance it. For example, now, if some group of guys, 5, 6, 7 guys, are coming to take this ballot box, they are not with arms and ammunition, they are just chanting, ranting, they want to pick it up, and you pick a gun, you shoot them up, it's not justified. He was talking about justification and excuse. That was not justification. The law does not allow you to carry justification on the ground of discretion to kill. You only come to the court of law to defend yourself in a justified ground that, my Lord, the reason why this incident happened was that this guy was trying to arm me or kill me, and the essence of engagement, he was killed. You don't kill, there's no law that permits you to kill.
Use of force.
All right, let's bring it to the elections now. We have had these politicians across the board signing peace pacts, calling for, on one hand, in this case, saying we're going to shoot people at sight, and on the one hand are saying we want peaceful, free, fair, credible elections. But then, do we see this as a state of, calling for violence of sorts? And then can we also see this playing out as people taking advantage of what is being said or what is not said to cause some form of confusion?
That's a very good.
Saturday.
That's a very good one. Just what we call, there are people who take that opportunity or that privilege are classified as conflict entrepreneurs, because people are waiting to invest in any given situation. Are you with me? To ensure that, now, like that statement that was made by the presidency, a professional conflict entrepreneur, someone who survives, who lives,
who thrives on that kind of thing.
who feed themselves under the auspice of conflict, will take that as an advantage. Because one, when you are talking that if you are saying you want to give a fire order, the people coming will be prepared. You have given them time to prepare, because I have heard that the president says shoot at sight. Those people might also come with a general multipurpose machine gun. You are with your Kalashnikov, and when you say shoot aside, when you're against me, that statement indirectly is putting the Nigerian public at risk. And that is going to result to voter apathy. in the sense that people might not come out to vote. Because when you tell me that in X-Y location, you are going to shoot at sight, and there's what we call stray bullet. Stray bullet has no direction.
What's the likelihood that this scenario would play out on Saturday?
It's very likely, very likely. Again, I want to say something, because when the terminology that is examined, one of the phrases that was used is that whoever tries to disrupt the process. Now, I remember in the past election cycle where there was an attempt to inflate the figures, and people who had stayed back to ensure that votes were counted insisted that the votes be counted and before they collected the report and sent to the other centers. Now, that could be perceived as an attempt to disrupt the proceedings. So, in other words, people are skeptical, and if you look at it, it reinforces certain beliefs and certain positions held that this government is insistent on coming back by every means available to it. Even with, I mean, of course, people will always, like you said, there are conflict entrepreneurs who read meaning into everything, including the deployment of police personnel across the country. But you cannot help but associate what has been said with the body language of this administration, and that is that they want to come back by every means available to it. And I feel sorry for Nigerians who have been exposed to this sort of thing, because a president who is sensitive to this sort of, to people who generally say, oh, I am sorry, I meant this. Because again,
he should apologize.
He
must apologize.
He should apologize. Don't take no
It's not bigger than Nigeria. It's not bigger than Nigeria.
Yes.
The president must apologize because this country has benefited him. He was once a major general. He has ruled this country as military administration. In 2015, before he came into power, close to 80 to 85% of Nigerians loved him. Say Baba was the music of the day every day. He came into power, and you think you can give an indirect fire order? That is unacceptable. He must apologize.
It's ironic that a man who ought to have been sanctioned by execution for taking over a government by force, which a coup d'etat is part of what military has subscribed to. That
but he is in the first. There were so many coups before his.
But I mean, he's come back and been the beneficiary of rule of law and democracy, and then to flout it by making such a statement recklessly and not showing any remorse whatsoever up until this period, a few hours to the elections. And
what is even amazing is that the advocate, senior advocate, is he of Nigeria? You are an advocate. You don't come on air, and what Kiyamo was saying on air was a verbal judo.
It's a disgrace
to the profession. But they say the law is an ass, and you can write it in whatever direction.
You say what?
They said the law is an ass, but I mean...
No, the law was written in pure English language, not written in Arabic or Italian.
He's made a career
very clear.
Gentlemen, let us talk about something really important. And before we came back on set, we were talking about it at the background. We're talking about the plight of people who get caught in the line of fire. When perhaps a trigger-happy officer has his way and somebody falls, just like that Nigerian we saw in that video who died possibly on the spot. But then some are lucky to make it to the hospital. But then hospitals are not able to act, even though we know that President Buhari in 2017 passed the Compulsory Treatment and Care for Victims of Gunshot Act. What's the reality out here in our hospitals? What plays out? We find that people still cannot access health care in those times when every moment counts. What's your
Generally,
take?
Victims of gunshot wounds.
It's not. I mean, two examples. So I know of a situation where a guy was rushed to the hospital for being a victim of a gunshot wound, and then while he was there, the police, and about to be treated, the police drives there, takes him away, and never returns him. Nobody knows what became of him. Let me give another example. And this one now has to do with negligence of medical personnel. So a guy was stabbed in Port Harcourt on the way back on an evening. They tried to take his phone from him, but he tried to struggle and then they stabbed him. He made his way to the hospital, and the hospital said, before we treat you, you need to pay X amount of money. And he didn't have that much money, and then he called his sister, and there were passers-by who came and tried to help him. Eventually, his sister transferred the money to the bank, to the bank account of that hospital. But the hospital said they had not received the alert yet, and they didn't treat the guy, and the guy bled to death.
He died.
And so he died. So again, this thing has to do with the perception of the hospitals to what the government will do or what the police will do if they do receive and do what they are professionally trained and taught to do.
But medically, the #1 duty of a health practitioner is to save lives.
First.
That's a sensitive issue. When you say treat first, ask questions, there are times when you get when we talk about gunshot, it's not a slap, it's a penetration. Peradventure, it might go through the bone. Peradventure, it might go through the flesh, out of the flesh, through the flesh,
wound, or
through the bone, out of the bone. You never can tell the pain that person is. The core essence is this: safety first. application of safety have to come to play because the core essence of governance, the Constitution stated very clearly that the primary purpose of governance is the welfare and security of
people,
Nigerians. Are you with me? Now, that act that was passed in 2017, it has to come into enforcement so that people who suffer stray bullets don't pay the price they are not supposed to pay. When an hospital, that does not mean that everybody will start running to the hospital with a gunshot. But adventure, there might be a criminal element. The process should be very clear. When you arrive at the hospital with a gunshot, the medical personnel should proceed with the treatment.
But also
it's in your custody. It can disappear. The first administration of drugs you're going to issue that person, the police are not far away from you. That is why every hospital have the phone numbers of the nearest police division. Commence the treatment immediately and call the nearest DPO. Sir, this is XYZ hospital. We have a gunshot person here. We have commenced treatment. Please, can you send in your investigative, because the hospital guys, you don't have power to interrogate. You can't interrogate. You can only ask, what happened, what happened? There are limits to your interview. So it's only the police that will come and interrogate that person when he has regained consciousness. So the application of that act should ensure that when you arrive at the hospital, the first process is to commence treatment. When you commence treatment, you don't keep quiet. When you commence treatment and you don't report to the police, you've committed an offense against the state, because that could be cited as aiding and abetting of crime.
So I think even beyond just educating the hospital personnel, medical personnel across the country, what is more important is to educate the police, members of the police force, because more often than not, we've seen them victimize hospitals who've even tried to do the right thing at every point in time. It happens, I mean, even with traffic violations, we've seen some policemen be high-handed, or rather heavy-handed, and they know what the law says, but they don't do it because there's nothing to put them in place for not doing the right thing. So,
right. Gentlemen, unfortunately, we have to wrap up this conversation. It's very interesting. We wish we had enough time, but thank you so much for the interesting perspectives that you have brought to this conversation. We want to appreciate you, Dixon Osage, security consultant, and of course, Peter Egbidan, security consultant. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll take a quick break now, and we're still talking security right after. Stay with us.